Now I do have a little bit of a rough edge, so I'm going around the outside edge with a deburring tool just to get rid of any sharp edges. And it looks like we got visitors too. It's that time of year. Hey, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts and I hope you're doing okay. Recently, Craft Resin contacted me. They reached out to me and said, would I like to try some of their resin? Now, I haven't used Craft Resin for about 4 or 5 years and their range of resins has completely changed since then. Companies move forward, they have different recipes, they introduce new things, and there was quite a lot that I didn't know they actually sold as well. So I said I'd love to try some and show you guys what it's like. So they sent me some tabletop epoxy. I wasn't really expecting that, but I got to try it. So this is Craft Resin tabletop epoxy, crystal clear. It states it's high gloss, scratch resistant, food safe, heat resistant, UV protected and odourless. It does have quite a nice leaflet inside and by all means press pause and read it for yourself. It comes with a spreader, it comes with a stirring stick, it also comes with pumps. Now you don't have to put the pumps on the bottles, but I did put the pumps on the bottles because I actually wanted to see how good these pumps were. Some of them I've used in the past have been quite flexible and easy to break. These do actually feel rather sturdy. It also comes with a pair of nitrile gloves and I like that because nitrile gloves are what you really should be using. So I have 2 rather large bottles of tabletop epoxy, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. They also sent me a Craft Resin silicone matte in a lovely blue colour. When I was opening this up, it was quite stuck together from packaging in the packet, but I was really quite surprised on how thick and durable this silicone matte is. It's really sturdy, very thick. It did take a little effort to get it apart from where it had been travelling, but it's a decent size and it's definitely the most sturdy matte I've ever come across for resin. Now, as it's tabletop epoxy, I had to figure out what I was going to do with it. So I decided to get some wooden coasters out. These are just bog standard, I think they're basswood or pine. You can get them from Amazon. These came from Amazon. I will put the link in the description box below of where I got these from. They're literally just wooden coasters, but they're ideal for coating. They are a little rough around the edges sometimes, so I did give them a good sand. That's personal preference. And once I sand, I wash them off with some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of all the dust, so that they were nice, clean and dust free. I then put them on some plastic tubs that I had. I'm going to cover these in black paint first because I want the black underneath, not bare wood. So this is just watered down standard acrylic paint. It is quite runny, but the acrylic paint I have is really thick and gloopy, so I wanted it watered down. It does cover really nicely, however, really does cover well. I gave each one of these coasters 2 coats of this rather thin, watered down black acrylic paint. And it is easier if you do the sides of them first and then do the top. I then turned them over and painted the bottom as well. Of course, you don't have to paint the wood, you can just leave it bare. You can paint it white, but I find that black works best. Once they were painted back and front, it's time to cover the back because I'm going to flood coat these. Now I'm using tape. You can use Elmer's glue. You can also use liquid latex. But tape is a lot quicker because you don't have to wait for it to dry. And painter's tape is ideal. So I cover the back in tape and then I go around with a pair of scissors to cut round. Now you can obviously cut a circle and then place it onto the coaster, but I prefer to do it this way so I get a nice snug fit on the bottom. These coasters are not flat sides, they are convex sides, so the resin needs to go over the convex shape and underneath the coaster, and it's underneath where you're going to get the drips. So you've got to make sure that those underneath pieces are covered. I mean, you can sand afterwards. You don't have to do this step. You can sand them back down. But that's another step. And we don't want another step, do we? Well, I don't anyway. Now, this time of year, I do use colours that I don't usually use. I'm going to be using green and golds. I'm using a variety of colours in all different shades, and I'm giving them a good mix in the bottom of these small cups. I want ultimately 2 different shades of green and a gold because I'm going to flood coat these coasters and get a green gold mix on the top. Well, that's the plan. So I'm mixing up different micas that I have. I don't have a lot of green colours, believe it or not, because I'm not a green fan. If you know me, you know that's true. But I do have a few. These are pretty much it. Maybe I need to invest in some green colours. No, I don't. I'm not putting very much mica into these tubs, but I don't intend to have a lot of resin in there either. However, later on I do add a little bit more colour because they're quite thin colours and I do want a thick coverage of colour on these coasters. So I give them a good mix until I get roughly the sort of greens that I'm looking for, and the gold obviously. So it's time to get the resin ready. Now I did put the pumps onto these bottles because, again, like I said, I wanted to make sure that they were really nice and sturdy. This resin is not warm. The temperature here has dropped enough to make my room chilly, but it's not enough to put the heating on, so everything is quite cold. It's not a great time to do resin when it's like that. Part 1 was really quite easy to get out of the pumps, but the other part was really thick. When I eventually managed to get the right amount into the cup, I started to stir and I realised I really did need to heat this resin up. So I'm using my heat gun to take that chill off the resin. The resin will turn a lot more pliable and thinner to move around when it's warm. I didn't put this resin into the vacuum chamber, it's just as it is, stirred with a stick. So now I'm dividing the resin into the cups. I don't need as much gold as I do the green, so the green gets the majority of the resin. And then I mix in those colours, and it's only then I can see, after mixing for a while, that I don't have enough mica in there to give me a good coverage. So I do go back in and add more mica to each of the cups. Not a lot of mica, just enough to give it a little bit more depth of colour so that it's not so see-through. It needs to be opaque. When I'm happy, then I start to pour over the wooden coasters. I'm just going to do this randomly. I need the resin to go over the edge so that it coats the sides of the wooden coasters as well as the top. But I've got that tape on the back to help get rid of the drips. So the 2 greens go on first. They are very slightly different shades. You may not be able to see the difference. One is more of a grass green and one is more of an emerald type green. And then I'm going to put the gold on there as well. Very little gold. It's going to be mostly green. Now, I'm not a green person. I've told you this so many times. But sometimes that colour just really works well. And this time of year, it really does work well. I could have done orange with these greens, but I think the gold actually gives a really nice contrast. I need to make sure that all of the edges have got resin on them. It's a little bit difficult when I'm trying not to get underneath the camera frame. So I've got myself a paintbrush and I'm going around each of the coasters with a paintbrush to make sure that the edges are coated. I then give a little bit of a wisp on the top to blend those colours in, and I add a little bit more of the gold in places that don't have any. This is basically fun time. This is play around with colours time, and I love doing this. This is my favourite time, messing around with the colours. I do use the heat gun to try and release any of the bubbles that may be in there and to give it a little warmth because it really is quite chilly. Top tip, by the way, if you do use a paintbrush to go around the outside edge or use it for any resin work, you don't have to abandon or throw away your paintbrush. You can rinse it out quite happily in isopropyl alcohol and it will come out as good as new. It does take a little bit of effort, but you can get those paintbrushes back to life. Once I've finished messing around with putting colours on, this is what we're looking at the moment. I really think that they are quite sweet. The different shades of green and the gold really complement each other. And the runoff that's on the mat looks absolutely spectacular. I really couldn't get my eyes off of that. I think I might have to use that in the future. And then I leave them to cure. So this resin does say that it takes around 36 hours to cure. This is the following day, however, and the coverage on these coasters is absolutely 100% beautiful. The tape did its job and collected all the drips, and now I can take everything off of this mat. The plastic tubs do an amazing job. And I was quite surprised how well this mat dealt with the resin. I usually use a black silicone mat, and if resin pours on it and I take it off, there's usually some kind of mark on the mat. But with this blue one, no mark at all. And these overpour pieces will definitely be used in something in the future. I'm keeping those. So let's see how the mat actually come out with all this resin pour. It was easy to clean. The tape takes off the resin really easy, as you can see. And I run my hand over to make sure I haven't missed any that I can't see with my eyes. And it's back to practically brand new. So now what am I going to do with these coasters? Well, as I used UV DTFs recently, recommended by Claire at Claire's Crafty Corner, I am well and truly hooked. So yes, I am going to use them for these Halloween coasters. They have a variety of uses and come in an amazing selection of graphics. You pull the backing off and you have white underneath the picture, so that you can put these pictures on any surface and you'll still see a vibrant colour. Now with a lot of stickers, they don't have white behind, and because they don't have the white behind, you can lose a sticker on a dark colour like green. But with UV DTFs, that is ultraviolet direct-to-film prints, they have the white layer down first so that the colour goes on top and you get a vibrant colour with no outside plastic lip around the picture. It is just the picture. It's not a sticker, it's a UV DTF. You pull back the film and you leave the transfer of the picture where it is in situ. I have considered actually buying myself one of these printers because I think it would be so much fun and very beneficial for a business. But they are quite expensive, and I think that's pie in the sky. but they definitely give the finishing touch to resin pieces, and this has definitely done that. Now, being a novice to UV DTFs, I have been told that you do need to seal these pictures in on something like a coaster. So I am going to seal them in. I don't think you do, but these are going to be used for hot drinks and I want them to be protected. So I'm going to give them another coat in this tabletop epoxy from Craft Resin. I've put a very small amount of rainbow glitter into the mix, and I'm just giving them one last coat in clear resin with glitter. The glitter will give them that sparkle, and it's going to seal in those transfers so that they are going to be completely encased in resin. And as this resin is heat resistant, I think it would work perfectly for coasters. Why wouldn't it? It's meant for tabletops, and all sorts of hot things get put on tabletops, don't they? I just think it's a great combination, and the feel of this resin when it's cured, it gives you that really strong feeling. When I picked up those coasters, I could feel how strong that resin is, and that was only after one day when it says it cures in 36 hours. I use a heat torch to get rid of any air bubbles, and I let them cure. Now, I did go to work the following day, so this is a couple of days later, but they are completely cured up. And it's time to take the backing off and to get rid of those overpour drips. With the tape, they just pop off. Now, you can use a heat gun to make it softer on your hands if you need to get under there and lift them out. A heat gun does work really well, but after a little while, all of the drips just pop off with the tape. Now, I do have a little bit of a rough edge, so I'm going around the outside edge with a deburring tool just to get rid of any sharp edges. And it looks like we got visitors too. It's that time of year. When I'm happy that there is no more sharpness to that resin, then I'm going to place a cork backing on the back of these. I tend to always put the cork on the item and then trim round it. That's exactly the same way as I did with the painter's tape on the back originally. You do get a better edge if you do it that way. Trust me, I've done it too many times the other way and I can never line it up right. And you always get it off to one side and you've ruined a piece of whatever it is you're using, whether it be cork or felt or whatever it is you're using as base. Felt works really well as well, but as these are going to be for hot drinks, I figured the cork would be better. Once I've got it roughly cut with the large scissors, I go around with a small pair of scissors and I trim it up so it's nice and neat. And again, I do that for all 4 coasters. I do think that finishing an item makes the difference in a sale or not. So finally, I have the 4 coasters made. So a little word of warning with this UV DTF, the transfer film did lift up slightly in the corners and I had to push it down while it was curing. Maybe going round an edge isn't the best idea with these. Trimming it up before it goes over the edge I think would be better. One of these needed an extra coat because it had a slight flaw in it, but I gave it a second top coat and it was absolutely fine. And I've managed to acquire some little Toonpish Crafts UV DTF transfers so I can put them on the back of pieces like this. Thanks to Amanda at Resin Supplies Den. So what do I think of the tabletop epoxy? Well, I've used it in a way that it wasn't designed for, but I think it works absolutely brilliantly. I can imagine this tabletop epoxy being used for all sorts, not just for tabletops. Maybe for trays or clocks, and it feels absolutely 100% solid within 24 hours, for me at least, and it wasn't a warm day. It's designed to be a very shallow pour, extremely shallow, so top coating trays would work out perfectly. And I really do love the craft mat. Thanks to Craft Resin for letting me have the opportunity to try this resin. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Come back and see me next week, because you never know what I'm going to be up to. I never know what I'm going to be up to. Have a great week. Happy crafting, and bye for now.